This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, Agun Erev Shabbos Rabbi. We begin with a very enigmatic statement of the Medrash Pliya. The Medrash Pliya says, Madua lo hitzlichu hameraglim. Why were the Meraglim unsuccessful? You know why? It's all the season. Mimnei shehayamim yimei bikurei anavim. Because it was the season of the ripening of the grapes. Huh? V'lachein ksiv, and that's why it says, Vatitzpeneu shloisha yirachim. She hid him for 3 months. And as all Medrash Pliyas go, this one is a Pliya. The reason why the Meraglim were not successful because it was the days of the ripening of the grapes. What does that have to do with the lack of success of Meraglim? That's why she hid him 3 months. That has nothing to do with the story. Moshe Rabbeinu's mother hid him for 3 months. So, as all Medrash Pliyas go, this one is certainly a whopper. Let's look at the pasuk that talks about the season that the Meraglim did their avera. It says, Uma ha'aretz hashmeinahi imraza hayesh ba'etzim ayin v'hischazaktem u'lekachtem mipari ha'aretz v'hayamim yimei bikurei anavim. The days were the days of the ripenings of the grapes. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't really care about what fruit was ripening during any time of the year. They sell it in the store the whole year. What do I care when it ripens? What does that have to do with anything? Also, the word yimei is extra. V'hayamim, the days were bikurei anavim. V'hayamim yimei bikurei anavim. And what does it have to do with the fact that in Sefer Shemais, in Parak Beis, Pasuk Beis, Vatar ha'isha, the woman conceived, Vatel bein, Vatera oisai ki toivu, Vatitzpeneu shloisha yirachim. That has something to do with the Meraglim. Well, if you look in the Zohar HaKadosh, the Zohar HaKadosh tells us like this. Look at number 4 for a moment. Vatitzpeneu shloisha yirachim, Elain Tlas Yerachin. These are the 3 months. The Dina Kashya Sharia Va'alma. That harsh judgment has dominion in the world. Umayninhu, what are they? Tammuz, Av, Teves. Tammuz, Av, and Teves. Now, how Teves comes in, how could she have possibly hid him for 3 months, and one of them was one time of the year, and the 2 months were the other time of the year? That is not for now. But there are 3 months of the year that are Yimei Hadin. Tammuz, Av, and Teves. Now, let's try to understand. When did the Meraglim, when were they sent out? Well, all we know is when they came back, Erev Tisha B'Av. So let's take a look at the Sefer Seder Olam Rabbah, which is, I believe, one of the early sources of Tar Shabbat Peh. The Seder Olam Rabbah says, Nasu me Chatzeros, they traveled from Chatzeros, Uba lehen lemidbar Paran, they came to Midbar Paran, B'chav Ches B'Sivan, on the 28th day of Sivan. U'v'chav Tes B'Sivan, Shalach Moshe Meraglim, Shenemar, V'hayamim Yimei Bikurei Anavim. V'yashuvu mitor ha'aretz miketz arba'im yam. They returned from spying out the land at the end of 40 days. V'tisha b'av haya, shetimtza oimer b'tisha b'av nigzar, but what was the day that the Meraglim were sent out? Chav Tes Sivan, a day before Chodesh Tammuz. Now, during Tammuz and during Av, it's Yimei Hadin. But Sivan, at least, they got in one day of Yimei Harachamim. Interesting. Says the Sefer Likutei Shoshanim. Likutei Shoshanim was written by Rav Shamshon Me'ashtapoli. Was one of the great Mekubalim of the 17th century, and they recently republished his works in a beautiful sefer called Nitzutzei Shamshon. So in the neighborhood gave me a copy, and Rav Shamshon Me'ashtapoli, who, by the way, there's a lot of Dvarim Niflaim that are written by Rav Shamshon Me'ashtapoli. For example, the Ramchal wrote something called Derech Eitz Chaim. And in the Derech Eitz Chaim, the Ramchal talks about how during the Gzeros of Tach V'Tat, Rav Shamshon Me'ashtapoli made a She'ilas Chaloim to ask why this was happening to Klal Yisrael. And they basically told Rav Shamshon Me'ashtapoli that Klal Yisrael would stop performing certain mitzvahs, he'll strike a deal with us and he'll make the Gzeiro stop. And Rav Shamshon said, no deal. The deal, all bets are off. But any event, says Rav Shamshon, an amazing thing. Look at number 4. Isa b'pliya, we find in the Medrash Pliya, M'nei Mala, Yitzlichu Meraglim, M'nei Shahayamim, Yemei Bikurei Anovim. That's why it says, Vatitzpeneo Shlosha Yerachim. V'lachein ksiv Anovim Chasar Yud. That's why the word Anovim is written, missing a Yud. Which we're going to have to explain, because
the Yud is there.
It's not missing a Yud. Slight problem. But, says Rav Shamshon, V'hanira, D'isa b'zayar, who is the angel of death? Who is the Yetzer Hara? What is his name? We call him the Samach Mem, but really Samach Mem is short for Samach Mem Aleph Lamed. That's his name. You got it? Samach Mem Aleph Lamed. If you have a kid or a grandkid, do not name him Samach Mem Aleph Lamed. Yesh lo shlita b'gimel chadash. He rules over 3 months. What are they? Teves, Tammuz, and Av. V'hinei amru Chazal, sheshiluach Meraglim haya chavtes b'sivan. The Meraglim were sent chavtes sivan. Uchsiv hayashim itoraz migezarom yoim. Uve'erev Tisha B'Av chazru. V'hukva b'chil adoyros. That means the messengership, the mission of the Meraglim, lasted from Tammuz until the 9th day of Av, which is the main power of dominion of the Samach Mem. Now he says a davar nifla ma'od, because we know that when they were sent out, look at number 7, Vayishlach oisa Moshe mimidbar paran al pi Hashem kulam anoshim. They're all men. Really? No kidding. We know they were anoshim. Their names were not Shprinza and Yenta. Their names were. We see who they're Nasiya Yisrael. Obviously, they're Anoshim. So Rashi says, Kol Anoshim Shebemikra Lashon Chashivos Va'oisa Shah Kisherim Haya. That means at the time they were sent out, they were Kisherim. Interesting. They were Kisherim then, but then they went sour. How did they go sour so soon? Says of Shamshon Shapoli, because they were sent out Chavtes Sivan. Chavtes Sivan is still a Yemei Rachamim, Yemei Chesed. Therefore, they were able to maintain their kashrus. But once they went on their mission during Tammuz and Av are Yemei Din, are Yomim that the Samach Mem has Kayach has Shlita. That's why they went sour. V'lachein Isa barashi Kulam Anoshim Lashon Chashivas v'Oisa Shak Shem Hayu Ratzlemer Davka Oisa Shah. That hour, that the Samach Mem did not have Shlita. But from that day on, it was downhill from there. By the way, I refer you to the last Maramakam on the sheets, number 24, where we have the Sefer Koimetz Hamincha, Rabbi Aryeh Leib, since he wrote Drashos, and in his 9th Drash on Sefer Bamidbar and Oizvav, he says the same idea. Kfar Kasapti. This is what it means. Ksherim hayu ba'isasha. Because on Chavtes Sivan, the Meraglim were sent out, and on Chavtes Sivan, the Samach Mem does not have Shlita. That's what it means. Shlach lecha anoshim. Sent for you, men. So comes the Rabbi Aryeh Leib since he says a davar nifla. If when Rashi says kulam anoshim is chashivos, then you have to say the same thing in the first pasuk in Shlach. Shlach lecha anoshim. Anoshim is chashivos. What do you mean shlach lecha anoshim? The answer is lecha means for you, and the answer is shlach lecha anoshim. Moshe, for you that you are bound and under the dictates of time. Lecha anoshim, they are chashuv to you, but to me, says Rebbe Sham, or I'm beyond time. I know what the end is going to be. To me, they're not chashuvim now, because I see what's going to be. Okay. Well, says of Shamshon Me'ashtapoli. Why does the Torah tell us the hayamim yemei bikurei anavim? What does bikurei mean? Bikurei can mean early, the first. So take the word anavim and let's make believe there's no yud for a moment. And let's go first. Let's go before. What letter comes before ayin? Samach. And what letter comes before nun? Mem. And what comes before beis? Aleph. And what comes before mem? Lamed. The Samach Mem Aleph Lamed. You know why they messed up? You know why they went downhill? You know why they turned sour? Because it was Bikurei Anovim. It was what became before the word Anovim. What comes before Anovim? Samach Mem Aleph Lamed. It says of Shamshon Sabal, V'hinei ha'oisios shekoidim oisios anovim, are the letters Samach Mem Aleph Lamed. Ratzaloymar, these are the days that the Samach Mem has dominion. This is what it means. V'hayomim yemei bikurei anovim. The oisios habakurim, which are earlier than the words anovim, than the letters anovim, the letter Samach Mem Aleph Lamed, which has Shemitah, and that's why there's no Yud there, because if there was a Yud, it would mess the whole thing up. It wouldn't be Samach Mem Aleph Lamed, it would be, have a seat, it would be Samach Mem Aleph Tes Lamed. And that's why she had to hide him for 3 months. What 3 months? The months of Teves, Tammuz, and Av. Okay. Now, in another version of the writings of Rav Shamshon Ashtripoli, in the manuscripts from Prague, look at number 9, he also says the same idea, that the Meraglim were sent out during Tammuz and Av, which were the days of the Shlita of the Samach Mem, and this is what it means, V'hayomim Yemei. And we mentioned the word Yemei is extra, but what's the gematria of Yemei? 60. These are the 2 months of Bikurei Anovim, the 2 months that the Samach Mem Aleph Lamed has Shlita. The Samach Mem Aleph Lamed has Shlita during these days. Now, he says something very interesting. He quotes from the Sefer Turei Zav, the Rav HaKadosh of Binyamin Mi Zalavich. He says like this. He quotes this idea from Rav Shamshon Ashtripoli, and he says, Mikan lamaga akum shehu yayin nesach. This is why if a non-Jew, a Gentile, touches wine, it's yayin nesach. Now, what does that mean? So I refer you to a moment to a sefer that we never quoted before in this year. Amazingly, even though we must be doing this, it's got to be 7 years, right? Still, we never saw this sefer, and the author is well known to us. The author is Rav Nassim Shapiro, the Megala Amukos. But I was not familiar. The Megala Amukos also wrote a sefer called Yayin HaMeshumar. Now, Yayin HaMeshumar is all about wine. It's a Kabbalistic sefer all about wine. And he writes the secret of why is Yayin Netzach, why is, if a guy touches wine, is it Aser? It's one thing if a guy pours wine for Avodah Zarah, it's Yayin Netzach. But why if a guy merely touches wine, right? I'm sure you know that if you have wine which is not mavushal, and a non-Jew moves it, and it's open, it's a problem. You can't drink it. So, or someone who's Mechala Shabbos, someone who doesn't keep Shabbos, if they handle your wine, it's a problem. Why is Stam Yenom Aser? Well, it says Megala Mukos, Klal Ha'oila, Me'achar She'ikar Hagram B'nizakin. Our main problem that we face today, Haya Shechavla Achla Me'etz Hadas. Why did Chava eat from the Eitz Hadas? Because she said that God told me not only am I not allowed to eat it, I'm not allowed to touch it. So the Nachash, the Samach Men said, oh really? You're not allowed to touch it? Look, touch. Nothing happens. Therefore, Chachamim Aser, that if a non-Jew touches wine, it's like the snake touches wine. Remember where all evil comes from. Remember where all the ills of society come from when the snake touched the wine, handled the wine. L'chein gazru Chachamim, shemaga goy oisa nesach, va'aser b'hava ki yayin nesach mamish. Now, who says that the Eitz Hadas was a grape? Yeah. Says the Megala Mukas, everybody knows that. It's a Yalkut Shemaini. Look at number 13. 1 second. Ma haya oisa ilan. What was that tree? Sha'acha mimena adam arisha. Look at number 13. The Yalkut Shemaini in Parshas Hazinu. Rabbi Yehuda Omer. Anovim hayu. There were grapes. Shenemar. Anovimoi inve roish. His grapes were grapes of bitterness. Ashkelois meroirois lamai. Oisan, Ashkoilos, those clusters, Heviu Miroirois Sa'ilam, brought bitterness to the world. Says Megala Mukos, what does the pasuk say in Hazinu? Anovemoi inve roish. So we would translate roish, maybe poverty or bitterness. No, if you look in the Targum translates it. Bereishei Chezen, a language of the beginning. In Veirosh, take the word Anovim and go Rosh, go before it. What do you do if you go before the word Anovim? Samach Mem, Aleph, Lamed, says the Sefer Yayin HaMeshumar Megala Amukais. An amazing thing. So this is the reason why Stam Yainam is Asar. It's sort of a reminder of that all the ills of society come from the fact that Chava exaggerated the Yisr that the Yonasham placed on her. Hashem said, don't eat it. Chava said, Hashem told me, don't touch it. Now, according to the way I understood, the Nachash didn't touch the Eitz Hadas. It was the Nachash pushed Chava into it. But in any event, the original sin came from the handling of the grapes, and therefore if a Gentile somehow is merames on the Nachash, if they handle grapes, this would be a reenactment of the original sin.
Rabbi, but grapes don't grow on an eighth.
Yeah, they do. They do.
It's
a tree. So the Medrash says. It's a specific type of tree. But if not for the fact that grapes have a chashivas, you would make bari priya eitz. It's just they have a special chashivas, so you say hagafen. Now, the Sefer Shtei Yados quotes the following. He says that, what were the Meraglim trying to do by, it says they took the grape, they took the cluster of grapes, and they put it on the pole. What were they dealing with the grapes? Why were they so interested in the grapes? Well, the Shelach Kadosh writes that the Meraglim were actually going, they had a kavana to be masaking the ched of the Eitz Hadas. Says the Shelach Kadosh in this week's Parsha, Ois Tes Vav, he says like this, that hatkina, v'hataiva, v'hakavoid, moitziin es ha'adam in ha'olam. These are the three great sins, kina, taiva, and kavod. They were what took Adam Rishon out of the world. You had the kina, the nachash was jealous of Chava. And you had taiva hulainayim. And you had kavod, v'yisem kelokim. Now Chazal say, the Shlach quotes, that when Chava squeezed the cluster of grapes, achla paga, she ate it raw. In other words, she ate it undeveloped. Vehim kiyua de peri adayin lo nisbashal, a fruit which is not yet ripened. Because in this world, kavod is considered an unripened fruit. It's not yet time for kavod. Kavod is in the olam ha'emes. Kavod is rak kavod chachamim yinchalu. Kavod are for the wise, and like it says, neged zaken of kavod. This is why wine is called yayin hameshumar ba'anavav. Rabbi say, what is the reward of olam haba? The reward of olam haba is called yayin hameshumar ba'anavav. Wine that's preserved in the grape. That is a reference to kavod. The greatest honor, the greatest pleasure that is available is kavod. However, not in this world. This world is still it's too premature for kavod. It's too premature for that. Kavod is for the next world. Kavod chachamim yinchalov. Therefore, the allegory to the kavod of the next world is yayin hameshumar ba'anavav. So Adam Arishon, when we say that he took from the Eitz Hadas and he took wine, that was a way of him pursuing kavod prematurely. That the grape, the wine was a way of Adam Arishon sort of going after the kavod of Yisem Kelakim, which was not yet the time. The correct time for that should have been in Olam Haba. Now, says the Shlach Kadosh, Va'az negad zakenim kavod zel yana meshumar. V'hinei ksiv v'hayamim yemei bikurei anavim. It says by the Meraglim, and the days were of the ripening of the grapes, ki Eretz Yisrael shalmata, mechuva neged shalmala. Eretz Yisrael downstairs is corresponding to Eretz Yisrael upstairs. V'hameraglim achul kiyua de peri. The Meraglim also ate the grapes prematurely. They also pursued kavod. By the way, the Zohar HaKadosh says that the reason why the Meraglim spoke badly about Eretz Yisrael is because they knew that right now they were in the Nasiim. But once they would enter Eretz Yisrael, there would be a new world order, they would lose their position. So they, so to speak, fell in the same sin of Adam Arishon. They wanted to maintain their kavod. They didn't want to give up the honor and the prestige that they maintained. So if you look back in the Sefer Nitzutzei Shamshon, he quotes from the Sefer Turei Zahav that the Meraglim were going to take from the fruits of the land to sort of be masakin. In other words, their avoida was, perhaps we could add, was to go to Eretz Yisrael and report well and be willing to give up their kavod for the sake of Klal Yisrael to be able to go into Eretz Yisrael. But they sort of regressed back into the cinema of Adam Harishon. The Kli Yakar, Parshas Vayishlach, also makes the same observation, that the partner of the Samach Mem is Anovim. Yeah? The partner of the Samach Mem is Anovim. So Samach Mem Aleph Lamed, Ayin, Nun, Beis, Mem. So these two words go hand in hand. It's one with the other. The Ayin is partner with the Samach. The Nun is partner with the Mem. The Beis is partner with the Aleph. The Lamed is partner with the Mem. Well, says the Kli Yakar, wine and the Yetzer Hara all share one major thing in common. They both blind a person. Everybody knows that when you're under the influence, you can't see clearly. You can't make a rational decision. You can't drive. You can't operate machinery. Your whole value system is warped. You can't evaluate. You can't weigh. You can't have shikol hadas. Well, that's what the Yetzer Hara does. The Yetzer Hara is the partner of Anovim. That's exactly what the Yetzer Hara does. He distorts the value system. He makes you drunk. He doesn't allow you to perceive clearly. So the Yetzer Hara and the grape, they are partners in crime. Says the Kli Yakar in Parshas Vayishlach. Look at number 14. He says, Achar, on the third line, Achar sheskimu roiv ha'mefarshim, after most of the mefarshim have come to the consensus, Shemalach zehu samach mem aleph lamed, soroi shal Esav, anikra samach mem aleph lamed Esav, ki kol cheftzoi v'yishay l'samei einei adam. His whole desire is to blind the eyes of man, u'lehakoisai, and to smite him be'ivaroin, with blindness, v'asoisoi suma, and to make him blind me'ein ha'sichli, to blind one's spiritual eyes, ara shalo yuchal haroya lirois b'maris ha'emes, so that the viewer cannot see accurately. Lavoi v'lirois p'nei Hashem v'lavoi b'sar Hashem l'reiav. He is the Satan. He is the Malach HaMaves. He is the Yetzer Hara. And the Remez is Ki samach mem aleph lamed shutafoi shel anovim in aleph beis. Just like wine that comes from the grape, it makes a person drunk and blinds his eyes, like the pasuk says, Chachli einai meyayin. And a drunk person, he walks like an iver. So too the Samach Mem. All of his schemes, all of his machinations is to blind a person. So again, we see this partnership between Anovim and the Samach Mem. And with this, it's explained, a medrash in Parshas Noach. The medrash says that when Noach came out of the Teva, we know the first thing he planted was Vayachal Noach ish adam vayita karem, he planted a vineyard. Says the medrash, Vayita karem, b'shah shahaya hoylech lita karem, when he was going to plant the vineyard, afka boy shida shmadain. The demon of destruction came. Amar Loi, he said to Noach, Shutafi imach, I'm your partner now. The question is, how is Noach in cahoots with the demons, with the dark side, just because he planted a vineyard? He's a partner with them. So also in the Sefer Nitzutzei Shamshon, he brings down from Harav Tzadik Rabbi Lazar Reuben Misasov that in fact the word Anovim, Chasar without a Yud, the Oisio Shniyos, the Bikurei Anovim, the Rei Anovimoi Invei Roish, the letters before are the Samach Mem, and therefore, in fact, the wine and the Malach HaMaves are partners in crime. The problem, though, is, like we pointed out, that this doesn't work. Because our version of the Torah, Bikurei Anovim, the word Anovim is spelled Al Ayin Nun Vez Yud Mem. And who is bothered by this question? None other than the Chidah. The Chidah in the Sefer Dvash Lafi, he quotes this vart from Rav Shamshon Mashapoli, that She'oisiyos She'koidem Oisiyos Anovim are Oisiyos Samach Mem, and the Samach Mem has Shlita during these months of the year. V'havinon ba on the fourth line in number 18. Da'anavim ksiv biyud. Says the Chida v'yashafti ani adal b'kunshas dvarim achadim. I already answered it in my work dvarim achadim that we're going to see. However, says the Chida, if you look in the Sefer Asifas HaKayin, he writes that in the Mesorah, which is the authentic version of the Sefer Torah, Anavim Chasar Yud. The word Anavim is written without a Yud. Says the Chida, Lo Hayud Dvar Me'olam, Nishka Shtoivin, Nishka Flagin. It doesn't say in any Mesorah that Anavim is spelled without a Yud. The Mincha Shai, who is the preeminent authority on the correct letters, like Kasu Klum, he doesn't write anything. The Ramadal, also one of the Amudim that we rely on, doesn't write anything. Nobody writes it's Chasar and Sapela. However, says the Chida, I was reading one of the Svarim called Kanfei Yoina. Does anybody know who wrote the Kanfei Yoina? The Ramami Pano. Kanfei Yoina is written by the Ramami Pano. Menachem Azariah Mipano. And the Ramami Pano writes different klalim in drashos. And his 22nd klal, look at number 19. Chaf beis tamet, take out. That's the klal. Af al pi sheyesh lai. You're allowed to remove a letter even though it's there. Kegoin, vav, shal chaylam. If the vav is not really pronounced, it's just indicating a nekuda of oy, or a yud of chirik, which is not really pronounced, it's just indicating an e, you could darshan it as if it's not there. Says the Chida, when I saw this comment of the Ramami Pano, Amnam Ra'isi B'Sefer Kanfei Yoina, Hu HaYamayna Midos Hadrasha B'Chachmas Emes. He lists the Kabbalistic methods of exegesis, and in Klal Chaf Oifen Aleph, Tamid Afa B'Shiyeshu and Vav Shalcham Yod Shalchirik. Ba'Pisa Shaper Kama Rabbi B'Kadosh HaNizkar. Now we understand what Rav Shamshon Asapoli means. The Chazina Kilu Ksiv Anovim Yichen Ayud Shiur Shalchik Zimnan Deinim and Aminyan. A Yud that is an E, you don't have to count. You're allowed to darshan it as if it's not there. And whoever came later, they distorted what he meant by saying the Mesorah is that it's not there. No, the Mesorah is that it is there. But when you darshan it, you could darshan it as if it's not there. But we're going to give other answers as you're about to see. Comes B'nai Yissaschar, Rav Tzvi Elimelech Midinov, and in his writings on Chodesh Tammuz, Chodesh Av, Rabbi Sai, we're already holding the Shabbos in Shabbos Mevarchim, Chodesh Tammuz, and we know Rav Nachman Breslov says Tammuz is Rashi Tevis, Zman Matan Torah Seina, because really the Torah was given on when? Yud Zayin Tammuz. Moshe Rabbeinu came down with the Luchos. So it's a chodesh that we have to be mechazik ourselves and limud Torah. Well, the Bnei Yissaschar writes, the Hayamim Yemei Bikurei Anovim. He quotes of Shamshon Me'ashtapoli, and then he quotes the Kasha, the Chida, that Anovim is Malay. Says the Bnei Yissaschar, let me give a shot at it. How you could make this drasha that Anovim really stands for Samach Mem Aleph Lamed. What about the Yud? Al Pimasha Kasvu Gurei Harizal Bilikutim Ksavyad B'Shem Hari. And in other words, he's going to base his answer on something from the writings of the Ari, but actually he doesn't quote the Chida. The Chida himself brings down this principle. Let's read it in the Chida first. Kri Uksiv Hatamhu. Why do you have Kris and Ksivs? You ever have some words are read one way, some words are written one way and read another way, right? You have a Kri Ksiv. For example, you have in the Teichacha, you have the word for hemorrhoids. It's written one way, it's read another way. Batachayrim, or you have Hanara with a hay, read one way, it's read with a hay, it's written without a hay. Why do you have Kri and Ksiv? I mean, it's a Torah. Spell it the way it's read. Why would you read it one way and spell it another way?
So we could darshan differently.
The answer is there are two yeshivas. And what are they? Yeshiva Shalmata and Yeshiva Shalmala. And says the Chida in the name of the Arizal, why do you have Kri Ksiv? Hatamhu ki ator nirashas b'shtei yeshivos. The Mesivta ilah v'tata. The Mesivta upstairs and the Mesivta downstairs. B'yeshiva ha'al yoina ein satan. There's no smartphones. There are no phones at all. Ve'in pegara. When you're learning in the Masifta, whatever they're learning, you don't take out others from. You learn what's being taught. There's no distractions. There's no interference. There's one thing going on. Bisham nikra k'maishu nichtav. And there everything is straightforward. Whatever is written, that's what's read. V'chein shara tevos ein tzarich l'shanus behen lahadurei mila l'nartaka. You don't need to return the word to its sheath. K'maishu amar Rav Yeba Saba al Vashalom. Amnam b'yeshiva shalmata, in the yeshiva down here, tzarich limsa razei atar b'lechisha. You need to give things over secretly. B'sheyeh pshat hadvarim karv l'muskal l'rabim. And things should be somewhat more close to human comprehension. In other words, the reason why we have Krieg Siv is certain things fly down here and certain things fly upstairs. And it's written one way for upstairs and read a different way for downstairs. Well, using this principle, says the Bnei Yissaschar, he says on the next column, the second line, Ki atarnid rashas b'shtei yeshivos, m'siftei lavet hata, and he quotes the whole Arizal that we just read in the Chidah. Says the Bnei Yissaschar, midway down, Hamaskil Yavin Dua Hadin Kol Shari Yanyanim Dedarshu Chazal B'Ktsas Shinu Mimashinim Musar Shel Fanenu. Whenever Chazal darshan a pasuk, and you say, hey, that's not the pasuk that we have. For example, B'Yom Kalois Moshe, on the day Moshe finished, Chazal darshan it Kikala. We in Kikala. There's a vav there. It can't be darshan Kala. It says Kaf Lamed Vav Taf. How do they darshan kalas ksiv? But it doesn't say kalas. In our Masorah it says kelois with a vav. The answer is, yeah, in our Sefer Torah it has a vav. Upstairs in the Sefer Torah it doesn't have a vav. And Chazal are entitled to darshan it the way it is upstairs. So too, in the Mesifta Derakia, where we have no fear of the chitzainim, there Anovim is straight out. Ayin nun vez mem. But now you have a Remez to samach mem. Upstairs they can handle that. Downstairs we can't handle it. So we have to have a yud. In the yeshiva shalmala and their Sefer Torah, there's no yud. In the yeshiva shalmata, there is a yud. Okay, more Rabbi say.
Why don't we make it a Krinik Siv then? It's not a... Where we have it, it doesn't say Krinik Siv. In many places it says Krinik Siv, not here.
I guess there's certain things that we so can't handle, you can't even have it in a Krieg Siv. Rabbi say, this is what we're about to learn. Is one of the most fantastic things I've seen in a very long time. From the Chidah Sefer Dvarim Achadim, and it's something that should really give us a completely revolutionary understanding of the months that lay ahead of us. Rabbi said, we're still at the end of Sivan. We're still Begeder Kulam Anoshim. We're still Lashon Chashivos. We haven't reached those 2 months of the year of Tammuz and Av. We're in danger. We're in danger of the Bikurei Anovim.
Yeah, until Yud Zayin, the Tammuz, we have weddings, we have smachot.
We have simchos. Smachot are when people die. Simchas they're happy occasions. There's something called Masechta Smachos. No, I'm going there. I'm saying that.
the first half of the month is a fine month.
Okay, so we have to see. Let's think about the following.
So it started already. It's shown yesterday. Today.
In Chodesh Tishrei, first of all, we have a lot going on. You have Rosh Hashanah, you have Yom Kippur, you have Sukkot, you have Shmini Atzeret. You have 4 things. Cheshvan?
Not much.
Mar Cheshvan.
Kislev is a nice month. You have Chanukah. Teves.
Shiur.
Shvat. You have Tu B'Shvat. Adar. Nisan. You have Pesach. Iyar. You have Pesach Sheni.
Yom HaShmot.
Exactly. That was a joke. And Sivan was you have Shavuos. And Tammuz, you got nothing. And Av, you have nothing. And Elul, you have nothing. So why are these 3 months blank?
Well, Av, we will have a holiday one day.
Okay.
Because Bob.
It was a holiday.
You have no Yomim Tovim. Also, additionally, think about the fact that on Rosh Hashanah is a day of judgment for what? last year? Why would Hashem judge us in Tafshin Ayin Ches for what we did in Tafshin Ayin Zayin? The Day of Judgment should be in Tafshin Ayin Zayin. I mean, what Hashem should do is, He should make Rosh Hashanah 10 days before the end of the year, Aseret Yimei Tshuva, and Yom Kippur should be the final day of the year. Why would the Rosh Hashanah, Aseret Yimei Tshuva, and Yom Kippur be in Tishrei? It's a wrong month. Why would Hashem judge us next year for the past year? So this is a question that, you know who asked this question? None other than the Ramak, one of the greatest all-time Mekubalim, Rav Moshe Cordovero. Rav Moshe Cordovero was lived in Tzfas in the times of the Arizal. Now, the Arizal's Kabbalah is considered on the higher Madrega of the Ramak, but Ramak is still, he wrote the Pardes Rimonim, or the Talmud Devaira, and the Ramak asked this question. The Chida quotes it in Dvar Machadim. Look at number 22. And with this, the Chida is going to answer how we could darshan Bikurei Anavim, referring to Samach Mem, if there's a Yud in it. Says the Chida, V'nei Ramak Zatzal Chaka, V'yesh La'ira, Lama Yiyah Yom Hadin B'Rosh Hashanah. Why would there be a day of judgment in Rosh Hashanah? Shushana Acheres is different year. Yom Adin b'Seif Shnei Shlishi Chodesh Elul. You should have a Yom Adin 2/3 into Elul. U'b'Seif Elul Yeh Yom Kippur. V'Aseres Yimei Tshuva Yeh Ben Tayim. V'Hayot Soidek, and it would be more correct. Shavaynu Shanasa b'Shana Zu Yiskabru b'Shnasai. Why not atone for this year's sin this year? V'Lei b'Shana Acheres. Okay, this is the question of the Ramak. Says the Chida, it's quoted in the Sefer Meir La'aretz, and he gives an answer. Says the Chida, let me try my own answer. Va'ani ba'ani nirali lataretz. I want to answer Karev l'mashakasav b'Sefer Nizkar, close to what it answers in the Sefer Meir La'aretz, but b'signoi nacher in a little bit of a different way. But says the Chida, let me introduce it in the following way, with Medrash Ayalkod at the end of Pinchas, Rabbanan Amri, Yasafta Lagoy, the more you add Yamim Tovim, the more karbanos that will be added. Amar Rabbi Levi, B'chol chodesh b'chodesh, bikesh HaKadosh Baruch Hu litein lohem moyed liYisrael. In every month, God wanted to give us a Yom Tov. B'Nisan, He gave us. Iyar, Pesach Sheni. Sivan, He gave us. Tammuz, He wanted to give us a Yom Tov. However, we blew it. We made the Egel, and not only did we blow it for Tammuz, we blew it for Tammuz, Av, and Elul. And comes Tishrei, and Tishrei says, I'm a Bal Chayv. I owe Tammuz, I owe Av, and I owe Elul. So Tishrei says, Rosh Hashanah will be for Tammuz, and Yom Kippur will be for Av, and Sukkot will be for Elul. Says Hashem, you're paying back other months, and what's going to be for yourself? Let me give you a Yom Tov for yourself, and that's Shmini Atzeres. You hear what the Medrash is saying? Yeah. Really, there should have been a Yom Tov in Tammuz, in Av, and in Elul. But because of the Cheda Egel, we blew everything. But Tishrei is a Bal Chayv. Tishrei is paying up Rosh Hashanah for Tammuz, Yom Kippur for Av, Sukkot for Elul, and says Rebbeinu Shalom, La'chermu Parei Shalei in Anoitel, 10, take a look, it's mamish beautiful, 10 Loi Yoimai. So give him his day. So, Vayom Hashmini Atzeres Tiyalachem. And says the Chida, the Rav Zera Berach, he uses this to explain what it says in Eicha. It says in Eicha, Rabbah, if we would have been Zoicha, today would have been Yom Kippur. But now in Nebuch we have to lane Ched Chata Yerushalayim. It's a Pella. We would have had a Yom Kapara, and instead we lane Eicha. Says the Chida, yeah, had we not sinned with the Egel, Yom Kippur would have been tomorrow, and we would have laned Kibayom Hazeh, because Rosh Hashanah was going to be in Tammuz, and Yom Kippur was going to be in Av on the 10th day, and we would have read Kibayom Hazeh. And now that we sinned, instead we have to lane Ched Chata Yerushalayim, like the opinion that Tisha B'Av could have easily been on the 10th anyway. Like Rabbi Yochanan said, Ilu Havoi Hasam, I would have been Kaveh Tisha B'Av on the 10th.
So we would have a source you made Shuvah between Tammuz and Av?
Maybe.
It's not going to work. And then Sukkot would be in Elul?
Sukkot would have been in Elul. And Shmini Atzeres,
spread out.
Everything would have been spread out.
Period.
But
Rosh Hashanah would have been on Tammuz or the first day of Av?
Tammuz. No?
Yom Kippur is on Asar B'Av.
Yeah, it sounds like it doesn't.
It just has to be 10 days between. The whole calendar could have been changed.
Yeah. I think he says it would have been in Tammuz. Says the Chida. Now we understand the Zohar HaKadosh says in Yisrael that until Tisha B'Av the Samach Mem has Shlita. And that's it. The question is, we know the Beis HaMikdash actually burnt down on the 10th. Why does he only have dominion 9 days? And he doesn't have Shlita on the 10th day. In other words, the Zohar says there are 3 months he has Shlita. Tammuz, Av, and Teves. But the Chida wants to know what, but there's another Zohar that says he only has Shlita until the 9th day of Av. What the Zohar says in Yisrael, the Ad Tes Ba'av Davka Yesh Lo Shlita V'suloi V'tzarch Tam Ki Ba'asiri Nisraf Habayis Madua Davka Tes Yomim Omnam the Harav Nechtoi the Sefer Zer Berchel Gimel that until Matan Torah HaKadosh Baruch Hu was judging the world during Tammuz and Av. Amazing. It's brought down in the Sefer Zera Bereich that until Matan Torah, we know Avram Avinu kept Kol Torah Kula before it was given. When did he keep Rosh Hashanah? In Tammuz. When did he keep Yom Kippur? In Av. Shem and Aver. Rosh Hashanah and Tammuz. Yom Kippur and Av. And Chazal say, the Satan on Yom Kippur has no Shlita. So if the Satan has no Shlita on Yom Kippur, and Yom Kippur used to be when? The 10th day of Av. The Satan only had Shlita until the 9th. So even now that Yom Kippur was moved, still the Satan's dominion has ended. Because we know there's an idea that as long as a day once appeared on the calendar at a certain time, it always influences that Zman, even if it's no longer during that time of the year. So says the Chidav, L'chein gam kishachatu Yisrael, even when the Jews sinned, Kivan sheha'ara misnoitzitzim b'shamayim kenoida, since the illumination still shines, still glimmers in heaven, shekol ha'ara ha'mischadeshes b'yoyim echad b'shamayim nishar roshim b'yom eludaris olam, since once upon a time Yom Kippur was the 10th day of Av, therefore, on the 10th day of Av, from Brias Ha'olam, the Satan never had Shlita. In other words, when you're fasting on Tisha B'Av, you should be thinking, you should know, in Shamayim, tomorrow is Yom Kippur. Because once the day was a certain way in heaven, it always influenced that Zman. But the Beis HaMikdash was burnt on the 10th. That's right. The Beis HaMikdash burning down was a tremendous chesed for Klal Yisrael, because otherwise it would have been us. So Avram
Avinu's Sefer Torah didn't say Chodesh HaShvi right? I mean,
no, it said you fast on Tisha B'Av. It fast on the 10th day of Av.
So was that the 7th month? Then Pesach wouldn't be in Nisan.
Then Pesach wouldn't be in Nisan? No, Pesach would still be in Nisan. It's only Rosh Hashanah was in Tammuz, and Tisha B'Av. No, Tisha B'Av. Yom Kippur would have been in Av, and Sukkot would have been in Elul.
Av would have to have been the 7th month.
No, he wouldn't have.
That's what the Torah said.
That's what it says in your Torah. It doesn't say his Torah.
Avram Avinu, what Torah that Avram Avinu kept the Taryag mitzvos?
We don't know what you think it said in his Torah. What Avram Avinu did. You think Avram Avinu woke up in the morning and read Parshas Vayera? That on the 3rd day of his Milah, the Malachim are going to come and then he's going to have Yitzchak? Probably not. Probably not. So says the Chidah. Ve'ein loy samach mem chilek b'asir b'av. Samach has no shiur in Av. Ve'efshur. That's why Rabbi Yochanan said, if I was around, I would have made it on the 10th day. Why? Not because the 10th of Av is more chamer than the 9th. Adarabba. Because there's more rachamim on the 10th and the 9th. Because I would have made Tisha B'Av on the 10th, because that's the day that the Satan has no chelek and has no shlita over. Says the Chidah, now I could understand the drasha of Rab Shamshon Me'ash Chipoli, of how he could darshan Anovim without a yud, but it says a yud. Says the Chidah, don't take out that yud. That's a very important yud. Because the yud of Anovim will be transferred from Samach Mem Aleph Tes. That Tes is part of the repertoire of the Samach Mem. And that Tes stands for Tisha B'Av. V'ayomim yimei bikuar anam, the oisei chavil oisei anam, hem oisei Samach Mem, v'yesh lahom anam b'yud, v'chazu asarim. Now one of them says anavim without a yud. So says the Chida, it could be before the letter Yud is a test. It's a Remez on the 9 days of Av that in fact the Samach Men has complete control over. One last thing, and with this we will conclude. Says the Chida, and then we're going to come back to answer the Ramak's question. When Avram Avinu at the Akedah, now it comes out, Avram Avinu, what day was the Akedah?
Rosh
Or
Or it's machlekes, right? Some say Rosh Hashanah, some say Yom Kippur. Pickett of Blazer, I believe, says Yom Kippur. Yeah, but it wasn't Avram Avinu's Yom Kippur, because Avram Avinu's Yom Kippur was what? Was it the night that was the 10th day of Av? So now we're basically ruining the Akedah, because we used to think, what's the big schus of Yom Kippur? It was the day of the Akedah, but the Akedah was on our Yom Kippur, not Avram Avinu's Yom Kippur. So listen to how the Chida reads it. It was Ev Shel Remez b'pasuk. Vayikra Avram Shem HaMakom Hahu Hashem Yireh Asher Yeomer Hayoim V'har Hashem Yireh. And that means like this. Asher Yeomer. Toisus in Parshas Kisava he says V'Hashem Hemarta Hayoim. The word Hemarta means in exchange. So says the Chida, we could explain it as follows. Avram Avinu was Shomer Yom Kippur, what month? Av. But the Akedah was on the 10th day of Tishrei. So you can make the following remez. Hashem Yera'eh. Hashem should see the Akedah. Avram Avinu Sobrach HaKodesh. That in the future Yom Kippur will be moved to the 10th day of Tishrei. Says Avram, Asher Yeomer Hayoim. It will be exchanged with today. Today is Yom Kippur. It will be exchanged with today. That today will be exchanged instead of the 10th day of Av. And therefore, Amismal Bahar Hashem Yira'eh, Hashem should see this done on the future Yom Kippur of Klal Yisrael. So now we understand why the Yom Hadin is in the New Year. Says the Chida, Emar Mayata, Nechei Shakta Shakata Chakiras HaRamak. Now we've answered the Ramak's question. That you're right. Rosh Hashanah, Ramak, you're right, it should have been in Tishrei. It should have been in Tammuz, or Nav, or Nelo. Guess what? It was! However, we ruined it. V'nesba'la Tammuz av elul, v'sha'ala Moshe Rabbeinu Lamarim, to daven, and Moshe Rabbeinu went up, and he came down a second time Yom Kippur. Therefore, it was not possible to make Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur and Ella. In other words, you're right, the original plan was Rosh Hashanah should have been at the end of the year, but unfortunately because of the Ched HaEgel, we were mevatel the whole Seder Hadvarim. So really, this gives a little bit of a new perspective to the Zmanim that lay ahead of us. We understand why the Meraglim were Ksherim Ba'isasha. They were sent out on the 29th day of Sivan, before the Yemei Bikurei Anavim, before the 60 days that the Samach Mem had Shlita. But apparently this Zman of the year is a very difficult Zman. It's a Zman that is laden with potential for many Yamim Tovim. In fact, the Sfarim write that one of the reasons why we lay in the Parsha of Moyadim during the 3 weeks is because the 3 weeks will turn into Moyed. But it's not only that the 3 weeks will turn into Moyed. The 3 weeks originally had all the major Yom Tovim in them. The major Yom Tov, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot, these were all originally set up in the calendar. Rosh Hashanah was in Tammuz, Yom Kippur was in Av, and Sukkot was in Elul. And that's the reason why, because of the tshuva of Moshe Rabbeinu and Klal Yisrael, they were all effectuated in the next year, in the beginning of Tishrei, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot. Rabbi, this is the secret of the Hayomim Yemei Bikurei Novim. Back to the Medrash Pliya, where the Medrash says, Madua lo hitzlichu hameraglim. You know why? Because of the Yomim where Yemei Bikurei Novim, because these were the months that the Samach Mem had Koyach, and that's why Moshe Rabbeinu's mother hid him for those 3 months. Rabbi, have a great Shabbos.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.